This is a disclosure. Please note that all guests featured on the AdTechGod pod are invited to participate. They do not pay in any form to appear on the show. However, guests may be sponsors of the AdTechGod community, the AdTech forum, or other product offerings. This is AdTechGod, and I command you to listen to this commercial message. I'd like to introduce you to Publica by IAS, the award-winning CTV ad server trusted by some of the biggest streaming services and smart TV manufacturers globally. Publica helps a growing number of leading AVOD and FAST services to power their programmatic ad break decisioning via products including a unified auction, server-side ad insertion, and a demand-agnostic ad server built from the ground up around streaming. Head to getpublica.com to find out how they help CTV publishers to grow their advertising revenues and provide streaming audiences with linear-like TV ad break experiences. Again, go to getpublica.com. Welcome to the AdTechGod pod, your window into the world of advertising technology and the people behind it. I'm your host, AdTechGod. Welcome back to another episode of the AdTechGod pod, the podcast where we meet the people behind this great industry. I'm your host, AdTechGod. We have a special guest whose journey in AdTech has been remarkable. We're joined by Mari Tangredi, the Senior Vice President of Global Partnerships at Cadent. Mari's experience runs deep. Her journey is a testament to her entrepreneurial spirit and a deep understanding of the ecosystem. What's truly remarkable about Mari's career is not just her ascent through the ranks, but her role in significant industry milestones, most notably the acquisition of 4Info by Cadent. This acquisition stands as a hallmark of success and is a shining example of Mari's strategic vision and leadership. Her impressive experience and entrepreneurial mindset has not only contributed to her personal success, but has also been instrumental in shaping the success of the companies she works for. So whether you're a budding entrepreneur or an AdTech enthusiast, you're in for a treat today. Mari, welcome to the AdTechGod pod.
Thank you, AdTechGod. I'm really honored to be here, and I've listened to a bunch of my colleagues who have done these, and the pack of positivity that this is bringing to the industry is probably what I'm most excited about. So the industry is, it's at an exciting point. So I think I've said exciting a lot, but anyway, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Of course, anytime. And a lot of the positivity has to come from just, the negativity that we've been hearing in market over the last few years. I like to say that AdTech is in the clinical depression phase, and I'm hoping I can be the Prozac. So the idea is really bringing some positivity to the industry, highlighting some of the industry entrepreneurs and leaders, as well as those that I feel are rising through the ranks and should be highlighted. So it's all positive, and it's all in promotion of our industry to bring some happiness to people's lives. Mari, you have an incredible background. You're obviously a senior vice president at Cadent. Cadent, from my understanding, specializes in cross-screen buying, leveraging data for targeted programmatic buying. Can I ask you, now that you're working at a company like Cadent, how did you get there in the first place? What was your journey and how did you start in this industry?
I probably got started in this industry later than a lot of the folks that you've talked to. I started, a couple of people have said this as well. I started in development. So I was a software engineer right out of college, worked at AT&T. I did that for a bunch of years where you got your foundation of how to work in an industry, regardless of what it was. So I started there. I went to technical sales. I did some product development. I was in the big company space for, almost 8 years and didn't think the big company was for me. So I left the big company. I left the East Coast. I moved to the West Coast. I was employee 9 at a startup that was doing hosted email. So think of it as kind of Gmail before Gmail existed a while ago. And I headed up the M&A team there. We did a bunch of acquisitions. We ultimately went public. In that time, I met a bunch of different investment bankers. So as we grew that company from 9 people to 1,200 people, went public, saw great successes, did all those acquisitions, meeting investment bankers, I thought, that's kind of interesting. I was taking a little break, walking down the street in Boston, ran into an investment banker that I was working with, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm taking a break." "Don't you want to do something? This will be fun. There's a theme in this. This will be fun. This will be fun. Come, hang out with us, consult with us on what's in the deals we're looking at. So I ended up doing that for 8 years, did a bunch of cross-border M&A transactions. So really small companies, people who had just founded small companies, some pre-revenue, learned things like sometimes your company's the most valuable before you even have any revenue. And then some companies with big revenue bought by big companies, kind of across the spectrum. So did a lot of M&A work. After about 8 years of that, I got a little itchy and kind of wanted to do my own thing. So I founded a secure messaging software startup. That was fun. Spent some time with that. And that's actually where I made my first connection into the AdTech world. One of the co-founders ended up being the CEO of 4Info. He was at 4Info and we had lunch one day and he said, "This will be fun. Come join us at 4Info. Again, here's this fun aspect." And I said, "Okay, well, what is it?" So he explained it to me. It's a DSP. Didn't know what a DSP was. It's mobile first. Well, I knew what a mobile phone was because I just came from a mobile startup. I'd spent my whole life really in enterprise software. So this notion of coming into a world where, $1 million of business was conducted on an IO without all this paperwork, I thought, oh my gosh, in the enterprise software world, you'd spend months negotiating $1 million deal. And in this world, you've got a brand who's willing to do that to advertise. So, my eyes were opening. I was, couldn't believe this type of world existed and wanted to explore it. So it was fun. It was intellectually stimulating. That was about 10 years ago. So we built 4Info into a platform, and the platform really was underpinned by an identity offering. We faced the market as a DSP, but we had a big box brand come to us and say, "We really like the way you onboard data. We really like the way you measure, but we're kind of stuck using this other DSP. So if we could just use you guys for the onboarding and then the resolution on the back end for measurement, we'd love to do that." And that was really kind of the underpinnings of the 4Info platform.
It's kind of amazing that you mentioned the $1 million running through a basic IO, where, I think it's become so normal to see that. Like, here's an IO, here's X amount of dollars, have at it. But you're right, in most industries, that's not the case. I mean, the amount of paper trail you would need and contractual reviews you would need would take months. For us, it seems to be a pretty quick process, which honestly, I'm thankful for. When you talk about, underpinned by identity, utilizing the data, obviously your DSP and mobile first, how do you see things kind of changing over the next, 6 to 12 months? And what challenges do you see, or what opportunities do you see in market with obviously identifiers being deprecated and just the landscape and privacy regulation changing around?
Yeah, it's a good question. Joining in mobile from the get-go, I kind of missed the cookie world at AdTechGod. So you came into the mobile world where it was, you had those identifiers, and there's always this step function. You're moving to other identifiers, and some have great scale, some are lacking that scale. So I think there's always going to be that trade-off of you're going to have really accurate identifiers but limited scale, or you're going to have an identifier with a lot of scale, but then you're going to sacrifice the accuracy and the integrity of that. And my whole career in doing this and building out a platform built upon it to do things in real time, just make the world a better place for everybody who's got to touch it. I think you're just going to always see those challenges, and it's how you navigate it. And data science will always be with us because of that. You're always going to have to work around what's the, identifier of, 2024.
Yeah, I think everybody right now is flexible and open and trying to understand what particular identifiers are going to be best for the industry. There's a lot of great solutions in market. There was a recent report that came out where multiple identifiers were utilized, and they saw an uptick in CPM and they saw an uptick in performance. So it seems like it's on the horizon. I don't think it's the end of the industry as we know it, but I think being flexible and understanding that these are ebbs and flows in our industry and we need to adjust and move forward, I think is really important. So Mari, I ask you, you obviously were part of this amazing acquisition of 4Info by Cadent. That must have been incredible. What do you feel in your career was the biggest highlight and that you're the most proud of in the past, 10 years plus?
Yeah, I think in a lot of things that I've done along the way of, founding a company, getting investment, selling a company, buying a company. All of those things are really hard. I feel fortunate that I've been able to experience them, but then on the flip side, be able to, whether it was my time in investment banking or my time today, coaching students of my alma mater, of, being able to give some of those things back. So living the experience, you're founding a company now, as we talked about, going through that, you can relate to things. Buying and selling a bunch of companies, you can help people with that. And then just, building products. So, building products is a team sport. Building great platforms is a team and partner sport. We talk about the platform at Cadent has got something like 100 partners that help power it. So there's no individual contributors in this space. It's a team sport within the company. You've talked a lot about AdOps. AdOps is really important. Engineering, everybody's important to, building out that platform. In all of my experience in building out products, it's always been about listening to customers. Those first 5 or 10 customers are really important. Listening to them and, kind of balancing what they need. If you're hearing it from 3 of them, gosh, that's a feature that needs to be built. So I think it's this team sport mentality, especially in this industry, that's, making me really hopeful for kind of this next phase of television where, maybe some mistakes and stumbles were made with a cookie and that identifier in the past. And maybe TV can, make that better and do it right.
You touch on something, which is this is really a team sport and we need to work together. And that's been something that I like to highlight as well. I think anytime I hear major partnerships, I try to promote it, mostly because none of us can really do this on our own. In the end, we're going to need data partners. We're going to need measurement solutions. We're going to need a standardizer or multiple currencies. There needs to be better collaboration and less fighting, if you want to call it that. I think there's a lot of companies that provide lots of amazing products, but those products by themselves don't solve the problem for growth and increased revenue and increased spend in our industry and increased investment. And so my goal is, highlight the partnerships when they announce interoperability, highlight the partnerships when people have agreed on utilizing a particular measurement solution. It is important. And it is important for us to not only drive this forward in terms of innovation, but drive things forward in terms of partnerships and expansion and creating a better, more transparent industry altogether. I love that team sport part. And I think that's something that I'm going to kind of use.
Oh, all yours. Yeah, we win and lose together, don't we?
Well, I think that's the whole point. I mean, we can't do this on our own. We sort of need each other. We all have to work together. Yes, we might be competitors in some sense, but we have to work together. There's no option.
And look at the community you've built around the AdTechGod. I think that's a proof point of we're all your team in a way, right? As God's team, but whatever the community or the people are who come together in all of this, there definitely is a collegial feel to the industry.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, some of the conversations I read or get involved in, they range from, something as simple as troubleshooting a basic issue, all the way up to asking for advice, asking for contacts. And I think what I've realized is LinkedIn is a little bit more of a promotion, right? It's kind of amplify your voice, amplify what you have. I think conversations are starting to flow a little bit more naturally over the last couple of years. But the Slack community has really turned into a place to go get help, right? So I need help finding a job. I'm having issues with this particular partner and can't figure out how to troubleshoot. Has somebody experienced this? Can you help me? Can you not help me? And so the idea is, we all help each other and we provide the information that we have and we build together. And I've seen a lot of, messages go offline. Like, hey, do you mind if you DM me? I'd like to talk to you a little bit more in detail. So it's great that everybody's kind of joining together to help each other in what is historically a little bit less of a social industry, just really focused on tech.
Yeah. I had a CEO once who, whenever he, there's something difficult or a challenge, he'd come into your office and say, I need a favor from you. And I didn't really catch on to it till after it happened a couple times. And, it was his way of, if I asked for help and a favor, it was a kinder, gentler way of saying, hey, you messed up or you did something wrong. It's, let's do this together and let's tackle it. So You meet lots of good people along the way that you take those things and you bring them forward.
I agree. You've obviously, and most people on any podcast, on any kind of public forum, we often talk about a lot of our wins, a lot of the major milestones and successes in our career. Mari, are there any failures? Are there any challenges that you faced over the last few years where you feel like, wow, that was a really hard time for me to go through? It was really challenging emotionally, financially, whatever the topic is, that I think would be helpful for people to hear so that if they're going through similar, they understand that it's only temporary.
Yeah, I'm a Virgo, so I'm very goal oriented, and anything like an investment or a product launch, you can kind of take those things and internalize them. I think having a really solid refresh button is important in life and your career. A lot of people have said, don't take yourself too seriously. We're not saving lives here. Definitely, and from a work perspective, have that refresh button. Try to live as balanced as you can. The mistakes or the non-successes you learn a ton from. When you go through your career, you don't touch on some of the startups that you were part of that were failures, and you learn just as much from those. The ones that get acquired are great. We all talk about those, but you learn things like it's really important to pick the right founder. The team is really important. Getting those first 5 customers is important. So they're all learnings. You get to a point where you can look back and reflect on them, but you can't beat yourself up. Hit your refresh button. My mom always said to me when I was a kid, think of your past behavior. If you've done the best you can do, you put the work into it, you can't beat yourself up about it. And think of your past performance, you'll probably succeed as well. So there's that positivity again at AdTechGod that we started with. I think keeping that positive perspective, even when you have a bad day, downtime, bad investment, whatever, got to see the bright in everything.
Life is short, but then again, these cycles are short. And that's the way I look at things is, you might have a very good year or a very bad year. The reality is what's year out of 80? In the end, it's really a blip in your life. So being able to turn things around quickly, utilize your network, utilize your knowledge, and get out of it quickly, I think is what I've learned over the years, is that everything is a cycle, and those cycles seem very long while you're in them. But when you look back, they're actually very, very short. And so the positivity piece and the refresh button, I think, is really important, both for your mental health, as well as, standing back up and going back at it 10 times harder to be 10 times better. So I love that advice. This industry is obviously moving pretty fast. Cadent has been really a household name. I mean, Cadent's been around for quite some time and has its market share and has its position in market that is unique. What can you tell me about what Cadent is planning, or how does Cadent see the next 12 to 18 months, and how do you see their position in market?
Yeah, I think it's good to hear Cadent is a household name, first and foremost. So thank you for that. I believe that, making the right moves in this space, Cadent's been acquisitive to this point, started in the linear space, acquired some addressable set-top box assets, acquired for info for a DSP, CTV first assets, just acquired EMX for, supply side inventory assets. I think there's a great plan in place to really face the market for what you're hearing from brands and agencies out there of what they need. Early on, I'd ask customers, like, why don't you do more measurement on campaigns? You can measure, and, the digital world, you can measure outcomes. Why wouldn't you do that in TV? And you get the answer, it's hard. So really what Cadent's about is really kind of automating as much as we can for converged TV targeting, activation, planning, delivering, and measurement. So making that easier for folks. You have one client who measures every single campaign they run, and then you have other clients who maybe do 1 or 2 here and there. So it seems practical to me at AdTechGod that you would want to have some performance basis outside of just tracking campaign results. Did I deliver 100%? Well, gosh, did I get what I was paying for if I'm that brand or agency? Did I see more cars sold? Did, see more product leave the shelves? That's really what we're about at Cadent, is doing more of that. In an environment where everything's about efficiencies, the more of that you can do, again, it's just common sense. I want to know, what I invested in had some return on investment.
When you talk about converged TV in particular, that particular sentence that you said, what do you feel is really the challenge of, integrating a traditional linear and a, digital or connected TV together into one? Obviously, the data points vary. Obviously, cross-platform measurement is a challenge and being worked on. How do you see Cadent in particular playing a role in trying to solve some of these problems?
Yeah, I think that the biggest, we talk a lot about fragmentation. There's, fragmentation across where you watch TV, how you watch TV, and there's fragmentation across the supply sources. So I think pulling all that together and then underpinning all of this, that's why it was really important, the identity asset that got pulled into Cadent from the previous acquisitions of that gives you the power to tie that all together in real time. So, you've been in the industry for a while, the notion of sending a file out and having it take 3 days to come back isn't a pleasant user experience. We don't like to wait 3 days for anything in this world. So it's really about building out a platform that allows you to tie those things together, pull in the data. So onboard first party data, decorate it with third party data, activate it, optimize it, and then pull that all back in for measurement kind of within the walls of Cadent. So you can do that in a unified cross-channel way, give analytics dashboards where, these are where, this enterprise software experience of other industries pulling that forward into AdTech. I think that's what's been fun to watch these last 10 years. When I first entered it, everything was done on paper. I couldn't believe, back to the point of, how much money was being spent kind of in this manual process. So automating all this and bringing technology, AdTech, it's been wonderful to watch how it's happened. And in TV now, there's so much excitement around CTV because it's growing so fast and everybody follows the money. So, we're following the money, and CTV looked a lot like digital. So a lot of technology and advancement sits within there. And then you've got AI and everything else that we talk about being layered in there. So the future's bright.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I like to say about the growth in CTV is, if you're not in CTV, do you even add tech? Because at this point, everybody's in it. I think it's a great growth opportunity for so many companies in so many different ways. It's just constantly growing. Obviously, we in some way understand the direction of linear, which is still obviously billions of dollars a year. But we also understand that the growth trajectory for connected TV is fast, and it's very fast. So I think it's amazing. On the Cadent front, it's interesting that you guys are a DSP with first-party data. Obviously, you create, the right type of analytics and reporting metrics, identifiers, and now the acquisition of EMX. You're obviously a full-stack solution that offers really from the buy to the sell side all the way through. Great, unique position to be in, especially at this point. I think many of the DSPs and the SSPs are following suit, trying to own the whole kind of supply chain in order to create their own highly targeted, accurate data points and then deliver across, transparent inventory sources. So I love that you guys are doing that as well. I think the entire industry is really following that path.
Yeah, it feels like it's about time, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it was destined to happen. I mean, it always starts with one, right? So always one person does it. Everybody was up in arms. Now you look across the board. Everybody at some point that's an SSP has acquired a DSP. Everybody at DSP has built a SSP. And I think at first everybody was really upset about it because everybody was stepping on each other's toes. But the reality is that, the SSPs are focused on a particular type of client, and the DSPs are focused on a particular type of publisher. So are they really stepping on each other's toes all that much? Maybe to some degree, but everybody has growth targets and everybody wants to continue to grow. So everybody's finding their own path to increase spend from advertisers and increase their spend to publishers. So it makes sense to me. I mean, I'm not upset about it. I just think it's the way the industry has evolved.
Yeah. And in working, heading up partnerships, a lot of our partners will say, well, my data sits in 5 or 6 different DMPs, and it's really not up to us, the provider of data or offerings. It's up to the brand or agency and which platform do they want to access it from. So I think you got to get your platform out there. And ultimately, we've said it a lot, people buy from people. but having efficiencies in the platform, sometimes being able to show the real-time nature of things. How many times I've heard, I didn't know something like this existed. And you think, oh boy, yeah, this exists. There is technology out there to make this a whole bunch simpler.
I like to say, those two items, right? I think it's efficiency, transparency, I think is super important. And I think that it is the right way to honestly do business at this point. The kind of black box of data is, in some cases, is going away. But I think the reality is that advertisers want transparency, and so do the publishers. And I think it's really important that we provide it to them so they feel more comfortable to, increase spend. I mean, that's in the end our goal.
It is a virtuous cycle, back to if you can prove out common sense that you got what you paid for, you made money off what you paid for. You want to do more business with that person or that platform or that technology. So the more virtuous we get as an industry, I think the more we grow.
I think we're going to throw accountability in there too. So we'll say, I'm going to create a deck on this now. I'm going to put it on there. We're going to say efficiency, transparency, and accountability is the future. Mari, the industry is moving a lot. Obviously, Cadent's doing a wonderful, wonderful job at that. You're obviously very dialed in. I mean, across the board in terms of technology partners and the landscape. Where do you find the greatest source of truth and the greatest source of information for you to keep up to date?
God. I mean, the AdTechGod. But, definitely, being exposed to this is you really bring in different perspectives, and I like that. I'm a visual person, so I like the Beat TVs. I like TV of Tomorrow, Tracy and team. I think, some of the legacy history there is really important because history repeats itself. And, some of the regular places, IAB, Media Post, I'm on the West Coast, so I wake up to hundreds of emails every morning and trying to filter through as much as I can. So there's definitely information overload. So having things like AdTechGod and BTV and things like that I think are just really helpful for all of us.
Awesome. Mari, that really brings us to an end of the podcast. I really wanted to thank you for being here, and thank you to the Cadent team and DBC for setting this up. So thank you so much for being here on the pod.
Thank you for the invite.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the AdTechGod Pod, a podcast for the people, about the people that make AdTech great. Stay connected with me for more insights, trends, and interviews in the realm of AdTech. Don't miss out on our latest updates, so follow me on X, Instagram, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't forget, ATG Slack community has insights, networking opportunities, and jobs. Keep the conversation going and stay at the forefront of AdTech innovation.